Don't forget to subscribe. Afterwards, the wisest and most spiritual books from the greatest authors await you every day. And now buckle up, sit back and we'll begin. The sayings of Confucius. Confucius is widely regarded as one of the wisest men in human history. The teachings of Confucius on the rules of conduct were known throughout the East and later even became a whole world religion that still exists today. Confucius quotes are just pearls of the wisdom of the East. You can build a strong state and even your happy life on them. Therefore, we strongly advise you to listen to them. Book 1. The Master said, "To learn and then do, is not that a pleasure? When friends come from afar, do we not rejoice? To live unknown and not fret, is not that to be a gentleman?" Yu Tzu said, "Few men that are good sons and good brothers are fond of withstanding those over them. A man that is not fond of withstanding those over him, and is yet fond of broils, is nowhere found. A gentleman heeds the roots. When the root is taken, the way is born. And to be a good son and a good brother, is not that the root of love?" The Master said, "Smooth words and fawning looks are seldom found with love." Zheng Tzu said, "Thrice daily I ask myself, in dealing for others, have I been unfaithful? Have I been untrue to friends? Do I practice what I preach?" The Master said, "To guide a land of 1,000 chariots, honor business and be true, spend little and love men. Time thy calls on the people." The Master said, "The young should be dutiful at home, modest abroad, careful and true, overflowing in kindness for all, but in brotherhood with love. And if they have strength to spare, they should spend it on the arts." Su Xia said, "If a man eschews beauty and honors worth, if he serves his father and mother with all his strength, if he is ready to give his life for his Lord, and keeps faith with his friends, though others may say he has no learning, I must call him learned." The Master said, "A gentleman will not be looked up to unless he is staid, nor will his learning be sound. Put faithfulness and truth first. Have no friends unlike thyself. Be not ashamed to mend thy faults." Zheng Tzu said, "Heed the dead, follow up the past, and the soul of the people will again grow great." Su Qin said to Tzu Kung, "When he comes to a country, the Master always hears how it is governed. Does he ask, or is it told him?" Tzu Kung said, "The Master gets it by his warmth and honesty, by politeness, modesty and yielding. The way the Master asks is unlike other men's asking." The Master said, "Whilst thy father lives, look for his purpose. When he is gone, look how he walked. To change nothing in thy father's ways for 3 years may be called pious." Yu Tzu said, "To behave with ease is the best part of courtesy." This was the beauty of the old king's ways. This they followed in small and great. But knowing this, it will not do to give way to ease, unchecked by courtesy. This too is wrong. Yu Tzu said, "If pledges are close to right, word can be kept. If attentions are close to courtesy, shame will be kept far. If we do not choose our leaders wrong, we may worship them too." The Master said, "A gentleman that does not seek to eat his fill, nor look for ease in his home, who is earnest at work and careful of speech, who walks with those that keep the way, and is guided by them, may be said to love learning." Su Kung said, "Poor, but no flatterer, rich, but not proud, how would that be?" "It would do," said the Master, "but better still were poor but merry, rich, but loving courtesy." Su Kung said, "When the poem says, 'If ye cut, if ye file, if ye polish and grind,' is that what is meant?" The Master said, "Now I can begin to talk of poetry to Tzu. Tell him what is gone, and he knows what shall come." The Master said, "Not to be known is no sorrow. My sorrow is not knowing men." Book 2. The Master said, "He that rules by mind is like the North Star, steady in his seat, whilst the stars all bend to him." The Master said, "The 300 poems are summed up in the one line, 'Think no evil.'" The Master said, "Guide the people by law, align them by punishment. They may shun crime, but they will want shame. Guide them by mind, align them by courtesy. They will learn shame and grow good. The master said, at 15, I had the will to learn. At 30, I could stand. At 40, I had no doubts. At 50, I understood the heavenly bidding. At 60, my ears were opened. At 70, I could do as my heart lusted without trespassing from the square. Meng Yi asked the duty of a son. The master said, not to transgress. As Fan Chia was driving him, the master said, Meng's son asked me the duty of a son. I answered, not to transgress. What did ye mean? Said Fan Chia. To serve our father and mother with courtesy whilst they live, to bury them with courtesy when they die, and to worship them with courtesy. Meng Wu asked the duty of a son. The master said, he should not grieve his father and mother by anything but illness. Su Yu asked the duty of a son. The master said, he that can feed his parents is now called a good son. But both dogs and horses are fed, and unless we honor our parents, what is the difference? Su Xia asked the duty of a son. The master said, our manner is the hard part. For the young to be a stay in toil, and leave the wine and food to their elders, is this to fulfill their duty? The master said, if I talk all day to we like a dullard, he never differs from me. But when he is gone, if I watch him when alone, he can carry out what I taught. No, we is no dullard. The master said, see what he does, watch what moves him, search what pleases him. Can the man lie hidden? Can the man lie hidden? The master said, to keep old knowledge warm, and get new makes the teacher. The master said, a gentleman is not a vessel. Su Kung asked, what is a gentleman? The master said, he puts words into deeds first, and follows these up with words. The master said, a gentleman is broad and fair. The small man takes sides and is narrow. The master said, learning without thought is naught. Thought without learning is dangerous. The master said, to fight strange doctrines does harm. The master said, shall I teach thee what is wisdom? To know what we know, and know what we do not know, is wisdom. Su Chang learned with an eye to pay. The master said, hear much, leave all that is doubtful alone, speak warily of everything else, and few will be offended. See much, leave all that is dangerous alone, deal warily with everything else, and thou wilt have little to rue. If thy words seldom give offense, and thy deeds leave little to rue, pay will follow. Duke I asked, what should I do to win the people? Confucius answered, lift up the straight, put away the crooked, and the people will be won. Lift up the crooked, put away the straight, and the people will not be won. Kai Kang asked how to make the people lowly, faithful and painstaking. The master said, meet them with dignity, they will be lowly, be a good son and merciful, they will be faithful, lift up the good, and teach the unskilled, and they will take pains. One said to Confucius, why do ye not govern, sir? The master said, what does the book say of a good son? To be a good son and a friend to thy brothers is to show how to govern. This too is to govern. Must one be in office to govern? The master said, a man without truth, I know not what good he is. A cart without a crossbow, a carriage without a yoke, how can they be moved? Su Chang asked whether we can know what is to be 10 generations hence. The master said, the yin took over the manners of the xia, the harm and the good that they did them can be known. The chow took over the manners of the yin, the harm and the good that they did them can be known. And we may know what shall be, even in 100 generations hence, whoever follows chow. The master said, to worship the ghosts of men not akin to us is fawning. To see the right and not do it is want of courage. Book 3 of the Kai. Having 8 rows of dancers in his courtyard, Confucius said, if this is to be born, what is not to be born? When the sacrifice was ended, the 3 clans had the young hymns sung. The master said, princes and dukes assist. Solemn is the son of heaven. What meaning has this in the courtyard of the 3 clans? The master said, "A man without love, what is courtesy to him? A man without love, what is music to him?" Lin Fang asked what good form is a truth. The master said, "A big question. At high tides, thrift is better than waste. At burials, grief is worth more than nicety." The master said, "Every wild tribe has its lord, whereas the lands of Xia have none. The Kai sacrificed to Mount Tai." The master said to Jan Yu, "Canst thou not stop this?" He answered, "I cannot." "Alas," said the master, "dost thou think Mount Tai less wise than Lin Fang?" The master said, "A gentleman never strives with others, or must he, perhaps, in shooting? But then, as he bows and makes way in going up or steps down to drink, his strife is that of a gentleman." Su Xia asked, "What is the meaning of her cunning smiles, her dimples light, her lovely eyes, so clear and bright, all unadorned, the background white? Coloring," said the master, "is second to the plain ground." "Then good form is second," said Su Xia. "Shang," said the master, "thou hast hit my meaning. Now I can talk of poetry to thee." The master said, "I can speak of the manners of Xia, but as proof of them Kai is not enough. I can speak of the manners of Yin, but as proof of them Sung is not enough. This is due to their dearth of books and great men. If there were enough of these, I could use them as proofs." The master said, "After the drink offering at the great sacrifice, I have no wish to see more." One asked the meaning of the great sacrifice. The master said, "I do not know. He that knew the meaning would overlook all below heaven as I do this," and he pointed to his palm. He worshipped as if those whom he worshipped were before him. He worshipped the spirits as if they were before him. The master said, "For me, to take no part in the sacrifice is the same as not sacrificing." Wang Sun Chia said, "What is the meaning of, 'It is better to court the hearth god than the god of the home'?" "Not so," said the master. "A sin against heaven leaves no room for prayer." The master said, "Chao looks back on 2 lines of kings. How rich it is in art. I follow Chao." On going into the great temple, the master asked about everything. One said, "Who says that the Tzu man's son knows the rites?" On going into the great temple, he asked about everything. When he heard this, the master said, "Such is the right." The master said, "In shooting, the arrow need not go right through the target, for men are not the same in strength." This was the old rule. Su Kung wished to do away with the sheep offering at the new moon. The master said, "Thou lovest the sheep, Su, I love the right." The master said, "Serve the king with all courtesy, men call it fawning." Duke Ting asked how a lord should treat his lieges, and how lieges should serve their lord. Confucius answered, "The lord should treat his lieges with courtesy, lieges should serve their lord faithfully." The master said, "The poem The Osprey is glad, but not wanton. It is sad, but not morbid." Duke I asked Sai Wo about the earth altars. Sai Wo answered, "The emperors of the house of Xia grew firs round them. The men of Yin grew cypress. The men of Chao grew chestnut, which was to say, let the people tremble." On hearing this, the master said, "I do not speak of what is ended, chide what is settled, or find fault with what is past." The master said, "How shallow was Quan Chung?" "But," said one, "was not Quan Chung thrifty?" "The Quan," said the master, "owned San Kuei, and no one of his household held 2 posts. Was that thrift? At least Quan Chung knew good form." The master said, "Kings screen their gates with trees. The Quan too had trees to screen his gate. When 2 kings are carousing, they have a stand for the turn-down cups. The Quan had a turn-down cup stand too. If the Quan knew good form, who does not know good form?" The master said to the great master of Lu, "We can learn how to play music. At first each part in unison, then a swell of harmony, each part distinct, rolling on to the finish." The warden of Yi asked to see Confucius, saying, "No gentleman has ever come here whom I have failed to see." The followers took him in. On leaving he said, "My 2-3 boys, why lament your fall? The way has long been lost below heaven. Now heaven shall make the master into a warning bell." The master said of the music of Shao, "It is thoroughly beautiful, and thoroughly good too." Of the music of Wu, he said, "It is thoroughly beautiful, but not thoroughly good." The master said, "Rank without beauty, ceremony without reverence, mourning without grief, why should I cast them a glance?" Book 4. The master said, "Love makes a spot beautiful. Who chooses not to dwell in love, has he got wisdom?" The master said, "Loveless men cannot bear need long, they cannot bear fortune long. Loving men find peace in love, the wise find profit in it." The master said, "Love alone can love others, or hate others." The master said, "A will set on love is free from evil." The master said, "Wealth and honors are what men desire, but do not go from the way to keep them. Lowliness and want are hated by men, but do not go from the way to escape them. Shorn of love, is a gentleman worthy of the name? Not for one moment may a gentleman sin against love. He must not do so in flurry and haste, nor do so in utter overthrow." The master said, "I have seen no one that loves love and hates uncharity. He that loves love will set nothing higher. The hater of uncharity is so given to love that no uncharity can enter into his life. If a man were to give his strength to love for one day, I have seen no one whose strength would fail him. There may be such men, but I have not seen one." The master said, "A man and his faults are of a piece. By watching his faults we learn whether love be his." The master said, "To learn the way at daybreak and die at eve were enough." The master said, "A knight in quest of the way, who is ashamed of bad clothes and bad food, it is idle talking to." The master said, "A gentleman has no likes or dislikes below heaven. He follows right." The master said, "The gentleman cherishes mind, the small man cherishes dirt. Gentlemen trust in the law, the small man trusts in favor." The master said, "The chase of gain is rich in hate." The master said, "What is it to sway a kingdom by courteous yielding? If we cannot sway a kingdom by courteous yielding, what is our courtesy worth?" The master said, "Care not for want of place, care for thy readiness to fill one. Care not for being unknown, but seek to be worthy of note." The master said, "One line, Shen, runs through my way." "Yes," said Zheng Tzu. After the master had left, the disciples asked what was meant. Zheng Tzu said, "The master's way is no more than faithfulness and fellow feeling." The master said, "The gentleman is learned in right, the small man is learned in gain." The master said, "At sight of worth, think to grow like it. At sight of baseness, search thyself within." The master said, "A father or a mother may be gently chidden. If thou seest they have no will to follow thee, be the more lowly, but do not give way, nor murmur at the trouble they give thee." The master said, "Whilst thy father and mother are living, do not wander afar. If thou must travel, hold a set course." The master said, "He that changes nothing in his father's ways for 3 years may be called pious." The master said, "A father and mother's years must be borne in mind, with gladness on the one hand and fear on the other." The master said, "The men of old were loth to speak, for not to live up to their words would have shamed them." The master said, "We shall seldom get lost if we hold to main lines." The master said, "A gentleman wishes to be slow to speak and quick to do." The master said, "A great soul is never friendless. He has always neighbors." Tzu said, "Nagging at kings brings disgrace, nagging at friends estrangement." Book 5. Of Kung Ye Chang the master said, "A girl might be wedded to him, though he has been in fetters, that was not his crime. He gave him his daughter to wed." Of Nanying the master said, "When the land keeps the way he will not be neglected, and if the land loses the way he will escape punishment and death. He gave him his brother's daughter to wed." Of Su Qian the master said, "What a gentleman he is. But if there were no gentleman in Lu, where could he have picked it up?" Su Kung asked, "And what of me?" "Thou art a vessel," said the master. "What kind of vessel?" "A rich temple vessel." One said, "Young has love, but he is not glib." The master said, "What is the good of being glib? Fighting men with tonguecraft mostly makes men hate you. Whether love be his I do not know, but what is the good of being glib?" The master moved Chi Yao Kai to take office. He answered, "For this I want confidence." The master was pleased. The master said, "Forsaken is the way. I must take ship and stem the seas, and you shall go with me." When Tsu Lu heard this he was glad. The master said, "Yu loves daring more than I do, but he is at a loss how to take things." Meng Wu asked whether Tsu Lu had love. "I do not know," said the master. He asked again, "A land of 1,000 chariots might give you charge of its levies, but whether love be his I do not know. And how about you? A town of 1,000 households, a clan of 100 chariots, might make you governor, but whether love be his I do not know. And how about Che? Standing in the court, girt with his sash, Che might entertain the guests, but whether love be his I do not know." The master said to Tsu Kung, "Which is the better man, thou or we?" He answered, "How dare I look as high as we? When we hears one thing, he understands 10. When I hear one thing I understand 2. The master said, "Thou art not his like, neither art thou his like, nor am I." Sai Yu slept in the daytime. The master said, "Rotten wood cannot be carved, nor are dung walls plastered. Why chide with you?" The master said, "When I first met men I listened to their words and took their deeds on trust. When I meet them now, I listen to their words and watch their deeds. I writed this on you." The master said, "I have met no firm man." One answered, "Shen Chang." The master said, "Chang is passionate. How can he be firm?" Su Kung said, "What I do not wish done to me, I likewise wish not to do to others." The master said, "That is still beyond thee, Su Kung said, "To hear the master on his art and precepts is granted us, but to hear him on man's nature and the way of heaven is not." Until Tsu Lu could do what he had heard, his only fear was to hear more. Su Kung asked, "Why was Kung Wen called cultured?" The master said, "He was quick and loved learning. He was not ashamed to ask those beneath him. That is why he was called cultured." The master said, "Of the ways of a gentleman Tsu Chan had 4. His life was modest, he honored those that he served. He was kind in feeding the people, and he was just in his calls upon them." The master said, "Yen Ping was a good friend. The longer he knew you, the more attentive he grew." The master said, "Sang Wen lodged his tortoise with hills on the pillars and reeds on the uprights. Was this his wisdom?" Su Chang said, "The chief minister, Su Wen, was thrice made minister without showing gladness. Thrice he left office with unmoved looks. He always told the new ministers how the old ones had governed." "How was that?" "He was faithful," said the master. "But was it love?" "I do not know," said the master. "How should this amount to love?" When Tsui murdered the lord of Qi, Chen Wen threw up 10 teams of horses and left the land. On coming to another kingdom he said, "Like my lord Tsui," and left it. On coming to a second kingdom he said again, "Like my lord Tsui," and left it. "How was that?" "He was clean," said the master. "But was it love?" "I do not know," said the master. "How should this amount to love?" Kai Wen thought thrice before acting. On hearing this the master said, "Twice is enough." The master said, "Whilst the land kept the way Ning Wu showed wisdom. When his land lost the way he grew simple. His wisdom we may come up to. Such simplicity is beyond us." When he was in Chen the master said, "Home, I must go home. Zealous, or rash, or finished scholars, my young sons at home, do not know what pruning they still need." The master said, because Po Yi and Shu Qi never remembered old wickedness, they made few enemies. The master said, who can call Wei Shengkao straight? A man begged him for vinegar. He begged it of a neighbor and gave it. The master said, smooth words, fawning looks, and overdone humility. So Chiu Ming thought shameful, and so do I. He thought it shameful to hide ill will and ape friendship, and so do I. As Yen Yuan and Kai Lu were sitting with him, the master said, why not each of you tell me thy wishes? Su Lu said, I should like carriages and horses, and clothes of light fur to share with my friends, and, if they spoiled them, not to get angry. Yen Yuan said, I should like to make no boast of talent or show or merit. Su Lu said, we should like to hear your wishes, sir. The master said, to give the old folk peace, to be true to friends, and to have a heart for the young. The master said, it is finished. I have met no one that can see his own faults and arraign himself within. The master said, in a hamlet of 10 houses there must be men that are as faithful and true men as I, but they do not love learning as I do. Book 6. The master said, young might fill the seat of a prince, and might Tsu Sang Po Tsu? Asked Chung Kung. Yes, said the master, but he is slack. To be stern to himself, said Chung Kung, and slacken his claims on the people, might do, but to be slack himself and slack with others must surely be too slack. The master said, what Young says is true. Duke I asked which disciples loved learning. Confucius answered, Yen Wei loved learning. He did not carry over anger. He made no mistake twice. Alas, his mission was short. He died. Now that he is gone, I hear of no one that loves learning. When Tsu Hua was sent to Qi, the disciple Jan asked for grain for his mother. The master said, give her 6 pecks. He asked for more. The master said, give her 16. Jan gave her 800. The master said, on his way to Qi was drawn by sleek horses and clad in light furs. I have heard that gentlemen help the needy, not that they swell riches. When Yuan Su was made governor he was given 900 measures of grain, which he refused. Not so, said the master, why not take it, and give it to thy neighbors and countryfolk? The master said of Chung Kung, if the calf of a brindled cow be red and horned, though men be shy to offer him, will the hills and streams reject him? The master said, for 3 months together Wei's heart never sinned against love. The others may hold out for a day or a month, but no more. Kai Kang asked whether Chung Yu was fit to govern. The master said, Yu is firm. What would governing be to him? And is Tsu fit to govern? Tsu is thorough. What would governing be to him? And is Chu fit to govern? Chin is clever. What would governing be to him? The Kai sent to make Min Tsu Qian governor of Pai. Min Tsu Qian said, make some good excuse for me. If he sends again I must be across the Wen. When Pon Yu was ill the master asked after him. Grasping his hand through the window, he said, he is going. It is the bidding. But why this man of such an illness? Why this man of such an illness? The master said, what a man was we. A bowl of rice, a gourd of water, in a low alley. Man cannot bear such misery. Yet we never fell from mirth. What a man he was. Jan Chu said, it is not that I take no pleasure in the master's way. I want strength. The master said, he that wants strength feigns midway, but thou drawest a line. The master said to Tsu Xia, study to be a gentleman, not as the small man studies. When Tsu Yu was governor of Wu Cheng, the master said, hast thou gotten any men? He answered, I have Tan Tai Mai Ming. He will not take a shortcut when walking, and he has never come to my house except on business. The master said, Meng Chi Fan never brags. He was covering the rear in a rout, but on coming to the gate he whipped his horse and cried, not courage kept me behind. My horse won't go. The master said, unless we are glib as the reader toe, and fair as Chow of Sung, escape is hard in the times that be. The master said, "Who can go out except by the door? Why is it no one keeps to the way?" The master said, "Matter outweighing art begets roughness. Art outweighing matter begets pedantry. Matter and art well blent make a gentleman." The master said, "Man is born straight. If he grows crooked and yet lives, he is lucky to escape." The master said, "He that knows is below him that loves, and he that loves below him that delights therein." The master said, "To men above the common we can talk of higher things. To men below the common we must not talk of higher things." Fan Chi asked, "What is wisdom?" The master said, "To foster right among the people, to honor ghosts and spirits, and yet keep aloof from them, may be called wisdom." He asked, "What is love?" The master said, "To rank the effort above the prize, may be called love." The master said, "Wisdom delights in water, love delights in hills. Wisdom is stirring, love is quiet. Wisdom is merry, love grows old." The master said, "By one revolution Chi might grow to be Lu, by one revolution Lu might reach the way." The master said, "A drinking horn that is no horn. What a horn! What a drinking horn!" Sai Wo said, "If a man of love were told that a man is in a well, would he go in after him?" The master said, "Why should he? A gentleman might be got to the well, but not trapped into it. He may be cheated, but not fooled." The master said, "By breadth of reading and the ties of courtesy, a gentleman is kept too from false paths." The master saw an ant Su. Su Lu was displeased. The master took an oath, saying, "If I have done wrong, may heaven forsake me, may heaven forsake me." The master said, "The highest minds cleave to the center, the common. They have long been rare among the people." Su Kung said, "To treat the people with bounty and help the many, how were that? Could it be called love?" The master said, "What is this to do with love? Must it not be holiness?" Yao and Shun still yearned for this. Seeking a foothold for self, love finds a foothold for others. Seeking light for itself, it enlightens others too. To learn from the near at hand may be called the clue to love. Book 7. The master said, "A teller and not a maker, one that trusts and loves the past. I might liken myself to our old Peng." The master said, "To think things over in silence, to learn and be always hungry, to teach and never weary, is any of these mine?" The master said, "Not making the most of my mind, want of thoroughness in learning, failure to do the right when told it, lack of strength to overcome faults, these are my sorrows." In his free moments the master was easy and cheerful. The master said, "How deep is my decay? It is long since I saw the Duke of Chow in a dream." The master said, "Keep thy will on the way, lean on mind, rest in love, move in art." The master said, "From the man that paid in dried meat upwards, I have withheld teaching from no one." The master said, "Only to those fumbling do I open, only for those stammering do I find the word. If I lift one corner and the other three are left unturned, I say no more." When eating beside a mourner the master never ate his fill. On days when he had been wailing, he did not sing. The master said to Yen Yuan, "To go forward when in office and lie quiet when not. Only I now can do that." Su Lu said, "If ye had to lead 3 armies, sir, whom would ye have with you?" "No man," said the master, "that would face a tiger bare-fisted, or plunge into a river and die without a qualm, but one, indeed, who, fearing what may come, lays his plans well and carries them through." The master said, "If shouldering a whip were a sure road to riches I should turn carter. But since there is no sure road, I tread the path I love." The master gave heed to abstinence, war, and sickness. When he was in Qi, for 3 months, after hearing the Shao played, the master knew not the taste of flesh. "I did not suppose," he said, "that music could reach such heights." Jan Yu said, "Is the master for the Lord of Wei?" "I shall ask him," said Su Kung. He went in and said, "What kind of men were Po Yi and Shu Qi?" "Worthy men of yore," said the master. "Did they rue the past? They sought love and found it. What they to rue?" Su Kung went out and said, "The master is not for him." The master said, "Eating coarse rice and drinking water, with bent arm for pillow, we may be merry, but ill-gotten wealth and honors are to me a wandering cloud." The master said, "Given a few more years, making 50 for learning the yi, I might be freed from gross faults." The master liked to talk of poetry, history, and the upkeep of courtesy. Of all these he liked to talk. The Duke of Shi asked Su Lu about Confucius. Su Lu did not answer. The master said, "Why didst thou not say, 'He is a man that forgets to eat in his eagerness, whose sorrows are forgotten in gladness, who knows not that age draws near?'" The master said, "I was not born to wisdom. I loved the past and sought it earnestly there." The master never talked of goblins, strength, disorder, or spirits. The master said, "Walking three together I am sure of teachers. I pick out the good and follow it. I see the bad and shun it." The master said, "Heaven begat the mind in me. What can you and Tui do to me?" The master said, "My 2-3 boys, do ye think I hide things? I hide nothing from you. I am a man that keeps none of his doings from his 2-3 boys." The master taught 4 things: art, conduct, faithfulness and truth. The master said, "A holy man I shall not live to see. Enough could I find a gentleman. A good man I shall not live to see. Enough could I find a steadfast one. But when nothing poses as something, cloud as substance, and want as riches, it is hard indeed to be steadfast." The master angled, but he did not fish with a net. He shot, but not at birds sitting. The master said, "There may be men that do things without knowing why. I do not. To hear much, pick out the good and follow it. To see much and think it over, this comes next to wisdom." To talk to the Hu village was hard. When a lad was seen by the master, the disciples doubted. The master said, "I allow his coming, not what he does later. Why be so harsh? If a man cleans himself to come in, I admit his cleanness, but do not warrant his past." The master said, "Is love so far a thing? I long for love, and lo, love is come." A judge of Chen asked whether Duke Chao knew good form. Confucius answered, he knew good form. After Confucius had left, the judge beckoned Wu Ma-chi to him and said, "I had heard that gentlemen are of no party, but do they too take sides?" This lord married a Wu, whose name was the same as his, and called her Miss Tsu of Wu. If he knew good form, who does not know good form? When Wu Ma-chi told the master this, he said, "How lucky I am. If I go wrong, men are sure to know it." When anyone sang to the master, and sang well, he made him sing it again and joined in. The master said, "I have no more reading than others. To live as a gentleman is not yet mine." The master said, "How dare I lay claim to holiness or love? A man of endless craving, who never tires of teaching, I might be called, but that is all." "That is just what we disciples cannot learn," said Kung Shi Hua. When the master was very ill, Su Lu asked leave to pray. "Is it done?" said the master. "It is," answered Su Lu. The memorials say, "Pray to the spirits above and to the earth below." The master said, "Long-lasting has my prayer been." The master said, "Waste makes men unruly, thrift makes them mean, but they are better mean than unruly." The master said, "A gentleman is calm and spacious, the small man is always fretting." The master's manner was warm yet dignified. He was stern, but not fierce, humble, yet easy. Book 8. The master said, Tai Po may be said to have carried nobility furthest. Thrice he refused all below heaven. Men were at a loss how to praise him. The master said, without good form attentions grow into fussiness, heat becomes fearfulness, daring becomes unruliness, frankness becomes rudeness. When gentlemen are true to kinsfolk, love will thrive among the people. If they do not forsake old friends, the people will not steal. When Tseng Tsu lay sick, he called his disciples and said, "Uncover my feet, uncover my arms." The poem says, as if a deep gulf were yawning below, as crossing thin ice, take heed how ye go. My little children, I have known how to keep myself unhurt until now and hereafter. When Tseng Tsu was sick, Meng Qing came to ask after him. Tseng Tsu said, when a bird is dying his notes are sad, when man is dying his words are good. 3 branches of the way are dear to a gentleman: to banish from his bearing violence and disdain, to sort his face to the truth, and to banish from his speech what is low or unseemly. The ritual of chalice and platter has servitors to see to it. Tseng Tsu said, when we can, to ask those that cannot, when we are more, to ask those that are less, having, to seem wanting, real, to seem shadow. When gainsaid, never answering back. I had a friend once that could do thus. Tseng Tsu said, a man to whom an orphan, a few feet high, or the fate of 100 towns, may be entrusted, and whom no crisis can corrupt, is he not a gentleman indeed? Tseng Tsu said, the knight had need be strong and bold, for his burden is heavy, the way is far. His burden is love, is it not a heavy one? No halt before death, is that not far? The master said, poetry rouses us, we stand upon courtesy, music is our crown. The master said, the people may be made to follow, we cannot make them understand. The master said, love of daring and hatred of poverty lead to crime. A man without love, if he is sorely harassed, turns to crime. The master said, all the comely gifts of the Duke of Chow, coupled with pride and meanness, would not be worth a glance. The master said, a man to whom 3 years of learning have borne no fruit would be hard to find. The master said, a man of simple faith, who loves learning, who guards and betters his way unto death, will not enter a tottering kingdom, nor stay in a lawless land. When all below heaven follows the way, he is seen. When it loses the way, he is unseen. While his land keeps the way, he is ashamed to be poor and lowly, but when his land has lost the way, wealth and honors shame him. The master said, when out of place, discuss not policy. The master said, in the first days of the music master Che, how the hubbub of the Quan Chu rose sea beyond sea, how it filled the ear. The master said, of men that are zealous, but not straight, dull, but not simple, helpless, but not truthful, I will know nothing. The master said, learn as though the time were short, like one that fears to lose. The master said, how wonderful were Shun and Yu. To have all below heaven was nothing to them. The master said, how great a lord was Yao. Wonderful. Heaven alone is great. Yao alone was patterned on it. Vast, boundless. Men's words failed them. The wonder of the work done by him. The flame of his art and precepts. Shun had 5 ministers, and there was order below heaven. King Wu said, I have 10 uncommon ministers. Confucius said, the dearth of talent, is not that the truth? When you followed Tang, the times were rich in talent. Yet there were but 9 men in all, and 1 woman. In greatness of soul we may say, the Chow was highest. He had 2/3 of all below heaven, and bent it to the service of Yin. The master said, I see no flaw in you. He ate and drank little, yet he was lavish in piety to the ghosts and spirits. His clothes were bad, but in his cap and gown he was fair indeed. His palace buildings were poor, yet he gave his whole strength to dikes and ditches. No kind of flaw can I see in you. Book 9. The master seldom spake of gain, or love, or the bidding. A man of the village of Tashyang said, the great Confucius, with his vast learning, has made no name in anything. When the master heard this, he said to his disciples, "What shall I take up? Shall I take up driving, or shall I take up shooting? I shall take up driving." The master said, "A linen cap is good form, now silk is worn. It is cheap, so I follow the many. To bow below is good form, now it is done above. This is arrogance, so, breaking with the many, I still bow below." From four things the master was quite free, by ends and must and shall and I. When he was afraid in Kuang, the master said, "Since the death of King Wen is not the seat of culture here. If heaven had meant to destroy our culture, a later mortal would have had no part in it. Until heaven condemns our culture, what can the men of Kuang do to me?" A high minister said to Tsu Kung, "The master must be a holy man, he can do so many things." Tsu Kung said, "Heaven has, indeed, given him so much that he is almost holy, and he can do many things too." When the master heard this, he said, "Does the minister know me? Because I was poor when young, I can do many paltry things. But does doing many things make a gentleman? No, not doing many does." Lao said, "The master would say, 'As I had no post I learned the crafts.'" The master said, "Have I in truth wisdom? I have no wisdom. But when a common fellow emptily asks me anything, I tap it on this side and that, and sift it to the bottom." The master said, "The phoenix comes not, the river gives forth no sign, all is over with me." When the master saw folk clad in mourning, or in cap and gown, or a blind man, he always rose even for the young, or, if he was passing them, he quickened his step. Yen Yuan heaved a sigh and said, "As I look up it grows higher, deeper as I dig. I catch sight of it ahead, and on a sudden it is behind me." The master leads men on, deftly bit by bit. He whitens me with culture, he binds me with courtesy. If I wished to stop I could not until my strength were spent. What seems the mark stands near, but though I long to reach it, I find no way. When the master was very ill, Su Lu made the disciples act as ministers. During a better spell the master said, "You has long been feigning this show of ministers. When I have no ministers, whom will it take in? Will heaven be taken in? And is it not better to die in the arms of my 2-3 boys than to die in the arms of ministers? And, if I miss a big burial, shall I die by the roadside?" Su Kung said, "If I had here a fair piece of jade, should I hide it away in a case, or seek a good price and sell it?" "Sell it, said the master. "I tarry for my price." The master wished to dwell among the 9 tribes. One said, "They are low, how could ye?" The master said, "Wherever a gentleman lives, will there be anything low?" The master said, "After I came back from Waterloo the music was set straight, and each song found its place." The master said, "To serve dukes and ministers abroad, and father and brothers at home, in matters of mourning, not to dare to be slack, and to be no thrall to wine. To which of these have I won?" As he stood by a stream, the master said, "Hasting away like this, day and night, without stop." The master said, "I have seen no one that loves mind as he loves looks." The master said, "In making a mound, if I stop when one more basket would finish it, I stop. When flattening ground, if, after overturning one basket, I go on, I go ahead." The master said, "Never listless when spoken to, such was we." Speaking of Yen Yuan, the master said, "The pity of it. I saw him go on, but I never saw him stop." The master said, "Some sprouts do not blossom, some blossoms bear no fruit." The master said, "All is due to youth. May not tomorrow be bright as today?" To men of 40 or 50, who are still unknown, no awe is due. The master said, "Who would not give ear to a downright word? But to mend is better. Who would not be pleased by a guiding word? But to think it out is better. With such as are pleased, but do not think out, or who listen, but do not mend, I can do nothing." The master said, "Put faithfulness and truth first. Have no friends unlike thyself. Be not ashamed to mend thy faults." The master said, 3 armies may be robbed of their leader, no wretch can be robbed of his will. The master said, you is the man to stand, clad in a worn-out quilted gown, unashamed, amid robes of fox and badger. Without hatred or greed, what but good does he do? But when Tsulu was everlastingly humming these words, the master said, this is the way towards it, but how much short of goodness itself? The master said, erst the cold days show how fir and cypress are last to fade. The master said, wisdom has no doubts, love does not fret, the bold have no fears. The master said, with some we can learn together, but we cannot go their way. We can go the same way with others, though our standpoint is not the same, and with some, though our standpoint is the same, our weights and scales are not. The blossoms of the plum tree are dancing in play. My thoughts are with thee, in thy home far away. The master said, her thoughts were not with him, or how could he be far away? Book 10. Among his own country folk, Confucius wore a homely look, like one that has no word to say. In the ancestral temple and at court his speech was full, but cautious. At court he talked frankly to men of low rank, winningly to men of higher rank. When the king was there, he looked intent and solemn. When the king bade him receive guests, his face seemed to change and his legs to bend. He bowed left and right to those beside him, straightened his robes in front and behind, and swept forward with arms spread like wings. When the guest had left, he brought back word, saying, the guest is no longer looking. As he went in at the palace gate he stooped, as though it were too low for him. He did not stand in the middle of the gate or step on the threshold. When he passed the throne, his face seemed to change and his legs to bend. He spake with bated breath. As he went up the hall to audience, he lifted his robes, bowed his back, and masked his breathing till it seemed to stop. As he came down, he relaxed his face below the first step and looked pleased. From the foot of the steps he swept forward with arms spread like wings, and when he was back in his seat, he looked intent as before. When he carried the scepter, his back bent, as under too heavy a burden. He lifted it no higher than in bowing, and no lower than in making a gift. His face changed, as it will with fear, and he dragged his feet, as though they were fettered. When he offered his present his manner was formal, but at the private audience he was cheerful. The gentleman was never decked in violet or mauve. Even at home he would not wear red or purple. In hot weather he wore an unlined linen gown, but always over other clothes. With lambskin he wore black, with fawn, white, and with foxskin, yellow. At home he wore a long fur gown, with the right sleeve short. His nightgown was always half as long again as his body. In the house he wore thick fur, of fox or badger. When he was not in mourning there was nothing missing from his girdle. Except for sacrificial dress, he was sparing of stuff. He did not wear lamb's fur, or a black cap, on a morning visit. At the new moon he always put on court dress, and went to court. On his days of abstinence he always wore linen clothes of a pale color, and he changed his food and moved from his wonted seat. He did not dislike well-cleaned rice or hash chopped small. He did not eat sour or moldy rice, bad fish, or tainted flesh. He did not eat anything that had a bad color or that smelt bad, or food that was badly cooked or out of season. Food that was badly cut or served with the wrong sauce he did not eat. However much flesh there might be, it could not conquer his taste for rice. To wine alone he set no limit, but he did not drink enough to muddle him. He did not drink bought wine, or eat ready dried market meat. He never went without ginger at a meal. He did not eat much. After a sacrifice at the palace he did not keep the flesh overnight. He never kept sacrificial flesh more than 3 days. If it had been kept longer it was not eaten. He did not talk at meals, nor speak when he was in bed. Even at a meal of coarse rice, or herb broth, or gourds, he made his offering with all reverence. If his mat was not straight, he would not sit down. When the villagers were drinking wine, as those that walked with a staff left, he left too. At the village exorcisms he put on court dress and stood on the east steps. When sending a man with enquiries to another land, he bowed twice to him and saw him out. When Kang gave him some drugs, he bowed, accepted them, and said, "I have never taken them. I dare not taste them." On coming back from court after his stables had been burned, the master said, "Is anyone hurt?" He did not ask about the horses. When the king sent him cooked meat, he put his mat straight and tasted it first. When he sent him raw flesh, he had it cooked and offered it to the spirits. When he sent him a live beast, he kept it alive. When he ate in attendance on the king made the offering. He tasted things first. When he was sick and the king came to see him, he lay with his head to the east, with his court dress over him and his girdle across it. When he was called by the king's bidding, he walked, without waiting for his carriage. On going into the great temple, he asked about everything. When a friend died, who had no home to go to, he said, "It is for me to bury him." When friends sent him anything, even a carriage and horses, he never bowed, unless the gift was sacrificial flesh. He did not sleep like a corpse. At home he unbent. Even if he knew him well, his face changed when he saw a mourner. Even when he was in undress, if he saw anyone in full dress, or a blind man, he looked grave. To men in deep mourning, and to the census bearers he bowed over the crossbar. Before choice meats he rose with changed look. At sharp thunder, or a fierce wind, his look changed. When mounting his carriage he stood straight, and grasped the cord. When he was in it, he did not look round, or speak fast, or point. Seeing a man's face, she rose, flew round and settled. The master said, "Hen pheasant on the ridge, it is the season, it is the season." Sulu went towards her, she sniffed thrice and rose. Book 11. The master said, "Savages, the men that first went into courtesy and music, gentlemen, those that went into them later. My use is to follow the first lead in both." The master said, "Not one of my followers in Chen or Tsai comes any more to my door. Yen Yuan, Min Tzu Qian, Jan Pon Yu and Chung Kung were men of noble life. Sai Wo and Su Kung were the talkers. Jan Yu and Kai Lu were statesmen. Su Yu and Su Xia, men of arts and learning." The master said, "I get no help from Wei. No word I say but delights him." The master said, "How good a son is Min Tzu Qian. No one finds fault with anything that his father, or his mother, or his brethren say of him." Nan Yung would thrice repeat the scepter white. Confucius gave him his brother's daughter for wife. Kai Kang asked which disciples loved learning. Confucius answered, "There was Yen Wei loved learning. Alas, his mission was short, he died. Now there is no one." When Yen Yuan died, Yen Lu asked for the master's carriage to furnish an outer coffin. The master said, "Brains or no brains, each of us speaks of his son. When Li died he had an inner, but not an outer coffin. I would not go on foot to furnish an outer coffin. As I follow in the wake of the ministers I cannot go on foot." When Yen Yuan died the master said, "Woe is me. Heaven has undone me. Heaven has undone me." When Yen Yuan died the master gave way to grief. His followers said, "Sir, ye are giving way." The master said, "Am I giving way? If I did not give way for this man, for whom should I give way to grief?" When Yen Yuan died the disciples wished to bury him in pomp. The master said, "This must not be." The disciples buried him in pomp. The master said, "We treated me as his father. I have failed to treat him as a son. No, not I, but ye, my 3 boys." Kai Lu asked what is due to the ghosts of the dead. The master said, "When we cannot do our duty to the living, how can we do it to the dead?" He dared to ask about death. "We know not life," said the master. "How can we know death?" Seeing the disciple Min standing at his side with winning looks, Su Lu with warlike front, Jan Yu and Su Kung frank and free, the master's heart was glad. A man like you, he said, dies before his day. The men of Lu were building the long treasury. Min Su Qian said, would not the old one do? Why must it be rebuilt? The master said, that man does not talk, but when he speaks he hits the mark. The master said, what is the loot of you to do, twanging at my door? But when the disciples looked down on Su Lu, the master said, Yu has come up into hall, but he has not yet entered the inner rooms. Su Kung asked, which is the better, she or Shang? The master said, she goes too far, Shang not far enough. Then is she the better? Said Su Kung. Too far, said the master, is no nearer than not far enough. The Kai was richer than the Duke of Chao, yet Chu became his tax gatherer and made him still richer. He is no disciple of mine, said the master. My little children, ye may beat your drums and make war on him. Chai is simple, Shen is dull, she is smooth, Yu is coarse. The master said, we is almost faultless, and he is often empty. Su will not bow to the bidding, and he heaps up riches, but his views are often sound. Su Chang asked, what is the way of a good man? The master said, he does not tread the beaten track, and yet he does not enter the inner rooms. The master said, commend a man for plain speaking, he may prove a gentleman, or else but seeming honest. Su Lu said, shall I do all I am taught? The master said, whilst thy father and elder brothers live, how canst thou do all thou art taught? Jan Yu asked, shall I do all I am taught? The master said, do all thou art taught. Kung Shi Hua said, Yu asked, shall I do all I am taught? And ye said, sir, whilst thy father and elder brothers live. Chu asked, shall I do all I am taught? And ye said, sir, do all thou art taught. I am in doubt, and dare to ask you, sir. The master said, Chu is bashful, so I egged him on. Yu is twice a man, so I held him back. When the master was in fear in Kuang, Yen Yuan fell behind. The master said, I held thee for dead. He answered, whilst my master lives, how should I dare to die? Kai Tzu Jan asked whether Chung Yu or Jan Chiu could be called a great minister. The master said, I thought ye would ask me a riddle, sir, and ye ask about Yu and Chiu. He that holds to the way, in serving his lord and leaves, when he cannot do so, we call a great minister. Now Yu and Chiu I should call tools, who are just followers then. Nor would they follow, said the master, if told to kill their lord or father. Su Lu made Su Cao governor of Pai. The master said, thou art undoing a man's son. Su Lu said, what with the people and the spirits of earth and corn, must a man read books to become learned? The master said, this is why I hate a glib tongue. The master said to Tsu Lu, Seng Shi, Jan Yu and Kung Shi Hua as they sat beside him, I may be a day older than you, but forget that. Ye are wont to say, I am unknown. Well, if ye were known, what would ye do? Tsu Lu answered lightly, give me a land of 1,000 chariots, crushed between great neighbors, overrun by soldiers and searched by famine, and within 3 years I could put courage into it and high purpose. The master smiled. What wouldst thou do, Chu? He said. He answered, give me a land of 60 or 70, or 50 or 60 square miles, and within 3 years I could give the people plenty. As for courtesy and music, they would wait the coming of a gentleman. And what wouldst thou do, Che? He answered, I do not speak of what I can do, but of what I should like to learn. At services in the ancestral temple, or at the grand audience, I should like to fill a small part. And what wouldst thou do, Tian? Tian stopped playing, pushed his still-sounding lute aside, rose and answered, my choice would be unlike those of the other three. What harm in that, said the master. Each but spake his mind. In the last days of spring, all clad for the springtime, with 5 or 6 young men and 6 or 7 lads, I would bathe in the Yi. be fanned by the wind in the rain god's glade, and go back home singing. The master said with a sigh. I sighed with Qian. Zheng Shi stayed after the other three had left and said, what did ye think, sir, of what the three disciples said? Each but spake his mind, said the master. Why did ye smile at you, sir? Lands are swayed by courtesy, but what he said was not modest. That was why I smiled. Yet did not you speak of a state? Where would 60 or 70, or 50 or 60, square miles be found that are not a state? And did not Chitu speak of a state? Who but great vassals are there in the ancestral temple, or at the grand audience? But if Chu were to take a small part, who could fill a big one? Watch the next chapter in the next part on our channel. The link will be in the description below the video. And that's not all. Our experts and regular viewers respond to all comments. Also check if you forgot to subscribe and set your bell to receive notifications about new audiobooks and other useful self-development materials that we release regularly. Join in the discussions, don't forget to give likes and, if possible and inspired, support the development of the channel financially. All useful links will be in the description and the first attached comment. Goodness, love and wisdom to all. And now move on to watch the next part of the video at the links below, or choose something from the playlists of the channel and those you see on the screen.